Everybody, my name is Joel Miller. I'm with 146 Supply Center in Millbury, Mass. We're a John Deere dealership. We cover pretty much the whole state of Rhode Island. I am not the guy that covers Rhode Island, but I am the guy that's going to be doing this municipal lease seminar. We're talking about municipal leasing because we're running into it a lot more now with towns. I don't know if you guys noticed, but the economy really isn't very good. Budgets are getting cut and slashed. People are facing layoffs, and you guys still need equipment. And leasing is an avenue to get that equipment that you need without having the budget. You know, the past couple of years, I've done more municipal leases than I ever have. I've been doing this for about 10 years now, and I'd say in the past 2 years, I've done more than I have in 10. So it's something that's up and coming. And I think after this, you'll see why it could be a valuable tool for you to get your job done. All right, so looking at your handouts, I'm a low-tech guy. I don't know how to use projectors and stuff, so I printed this thing off. What we're going to do today, our goals is to define what an equipment lease is and the different types that are available, what a municipal lease is and why it's different from your normal leasing, the features and benefits of it, and how this lease can be a benefit to your town. All right, so when I'm a salesman, I go knock on doors, and I walk into a town garage, and I talk to a highway superintendent or whoever. I mention leasing. Comments I hear right off the bat: we'll get hammered on penalties and the interest if we lease. All right, the lease price is too much. I hear that a lot. We can't trade anything in against a lease. I don't know where that comes from, but a lot of people think that. And the big one I hear all the time is town manager, town finance officer, whoever the case may be, says we cannot lease. Nobody ever knows why, but they hear that a lot. Town manager won't let us lease. I hope after this is done, I'll be able to address these, and you can go back to your towns and talk about those intelligently and maybe change the perception a little bit. All right. Some questions to keep in mind as we continue. All right. Why you might want to consider leasing. Do you have all the money that you need in your budget to get all the equipment that you need right now? Anybody?
No, sir.
All right. Do you have equipment in the corner of the yard that is pretty much a hazmat site now, leaking out? Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
Everybody has some of that. Does your city or town expect you to take on more duties and tasks with less staff and less money?
Absolutely.
I think that's pretty much going around now. Do any of you expect your budget to increase in the foreseeable future? Anyone?
No.
No? All right.
We don't. No.
Are any of you ever forced to spend more money on parts and repairs than you would like to instead of on capital? Yeah? I figured. All right. So just keep those things in the back of your mind as we're talking about this. So basics now, this is just basic stuff to get you into what we're talking about. What is a lease? All right, basically, a lease is a contract where one party, the lessor, gives to another party, the lessee, that would be the town, the use of equipment for a specified time, monthly, annually, set number of years for fixed payments. That's basically all it is. There's two types of leases. There's an operating lease and a capital lease. All right, where everybody gets the bad feeling about leasing is in an operating lease. Very rarely is a town going to get into an operating lease. About the only times that's going to happen would be for snow removal. You might rent or lease a loader for 6-7 months. That happens. It's basically a long-term rental. Or if you have a specific, like a one-time project going on where you might need a crane for a year, something like that. If you got a building project going on, instead of buying it outright, you might lease it, which is basically a long-term rental. With a lot of those, what happens is you have, yes, go ahead.
Is it feasible for a town to lease a sweeper for 10 months out of the year? I
look like an expert and play one on TV, but I'm not. And what I can tell you is you'd have to weigh it out versus, all right, buying one and the cost in that, and having the mechanic have to take care of that versus leasing one for a short term like that. I think by the time this is done, you're going to see that a capital lease might be better for you, because if you have a really bad year, and this is what a lot of people are afraid of with leasing, is if there are usually constraints on how much you can use that piece in an operating lease, whether it's hours, miles, like on a car lease. You know, you can't do more than 12,000 miles a year on a lot of them. And if you exceed that, you're going to get hammered in penalties. And that's why a lot of people have a bad feeling about leasing, is they think that all leases are an operating lease where, say you can use that sweeper for 300 hours a year. You have a really bad year, sand all over the place, and you've got to use it 400 hours. When you turn it back in, you've got to pay the overage for all those hours. And on top of that, you're paying all the maintenance and you know, oil changes, all that kind of stuff. And it makes a lot of people leery of leasing. So just keep that, table that for a second, and ask me that again when we're done. At the end of a lease, an operating lease, there's a residual value. On an operating lease, you're buying a percentage of that piece of equipment. So say the machine's $100,000, brand new, and you're gonna lease it for 2 years. You're probably only leasing 40% of the value of that machine. So at the end of that 2 years, there's 60% left over. All right, that's the buyout. That's what everybody talks about. With those buyouts, you can refinance them. You can just turn it back in and have nothing to do with it again. Or you can pay cash for it and do that buyout. And a lot of times it's a big chunk. It helps you get into a piece of equipment for a small monthly payment because you're only making payments on a percentage of the actual value. You follow me what I'm saying? And then at the end, you have that decision to make. All right, yes, this is something I really want. Now I have to figure out how to get the rest of the money to pay for the remainder. And in that time frame, if you've used it more than what the contract says, you've got to pay those penalties, regardless whether you're going to keep it or not. All right, so everybody's clear on that. Yep. All right, so that's an operating lease. All right, now a capital lease is one where you own it at the end of the lease. Basically, it's just a sales contract. And it's written as a lease to give you a couple, I don't want to call them loopholes, but a couple benefits in the whole sales contract. All right. Generally speaking, because you're going to own it at the end, there is no overusage penalties. So you can use as much as you want, as little as you want. You own it at the end anyway, so who cares? Basically, that's the difference. All right. Your monthly payments are larger because you're actually financing the whole value of that piece of equipment. All right. So if it's $100,000, you're buying $100,000 worth of it. So at the end of the lease, you own it, and you don't have to worry about any penalties. Now, a municipal lease is a capital lease, and it's written specifically for states, cities, and towns. It gives you a couple benefits in there, because a lot of you guys, how many towns do you know can budget 2 years out, 5 years out? It doesn't happen, right? And that's where a municipal lease comes in. All right, so if you look at the specifics of a municipal lease, I'm going to jump down to the third one because that's the big one, the non-appropriation of funds clause. All right, so what that says is, all right, say Town X comes up with $25,000 this year and they're going to apply that to a lease. You receive the equipment. All right, say 2 years down the road, you don't have that $25,000 anymore. The selectmen said, no, you can't have it. Something happened. What happens at that time is whoever is leasing the equipment to you just comes and picks it up. You're not on the hook for any of the remainder of that lease, and nothing happens to the credit or the bonding of the town. Nothing happens. That is the best thing going with the municipal lease. It gives you the out, and they have that in there because they know towns can't budget 2, 3, 4, 5 years out. These leases are written for 2 out to 6 years, and because I work for a John Deere dealership, and there's a lot of crediting agencies that will do these. John Deere Credit is their own bank, and they write these out. They're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to get into the equipment. And the way they look at it, all right, as a town, even on a lease, you're buying at state contract price, bid price, government price. You get the best price available going in, all right? So the way John Deere, as a manufacturer, looks at it, all right, so you're buying this at a discounted rate to begin with, and say the town uses it for 2 years. That's not a lot of use. So say you guys have to go bad on the lease, right? They say, all right, fine, we'll come pick it up. Then it goes to auction. They already know they have equity in that machine already. They know that because you bought it at such a cheap price already, and they know you haven't put a lot of hours on because towns don't, generally speaking, put as many hours on as a contractor does. So they know they're going to be getting something decent, and that's why they're okay to put that non-appropriation of funds clause in there. Yes?
Is that universal in these
In a municipal lease, that has to be in there to be considered a municipal lease. That is the big thing because towns, the state, cities just can't, generally speaking, they can't forecast 3 years out to know that something's going to be in the budget. And that's the whole point behind this. So if you're talking with me, and I'm your John Deere guy, and we're going to talk municipal lease, if you can get it locked down for 1 year, you're good to go. You can go ahead and sign a lease, have the equipment for at least that year. You know it, and I know it. John Deere Credit knows it. After that, you got to work your budget, and I'll get into how this can affect your budget to be used as a budgeting tool for equipment. Other things about the municipal lease is flexible repayment terms. When you're writing a lease contract, when you're writing it, you can spell out how you want that to be repaid. Monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, annual, irregular, every third Thursday of the second month. I mean, it doesn't matter. As long as they know going in, you can write those terms in there, and they're okay with it. Another big thing that will be in a municipal lease is the no prepayment penalty. All right, so say you're doing a 5-year lease, and after the 3rd year, you just want to buy it. You can buy the remainder of the lease out and not be hit paying for the remainder of the interest. All right, so you're not paying for those last 2 years of interest. You're just paying for the actual capital value of that piece of equipment, the selling price. So with the, I know specifically with the John Deere Credit one, and any of the other municipal leases out there, excuse me, you can buy that lease out at any time you want and not have to pay the remainder of the interest. And that's a nice thing too, if you get a windfall of some sort. Low interest rates, lower than most of your commercial leases, and there's no buyout at the lease end. On an operating lease, remember, you've got some sort of a residual buyout, 30, 40, 50, 60%. On a municipal lease, you do not have that buyout, so you don't have to worry about any of that at the end. All right, so we talked about the repayment terms. Generally speaking, you can do from a 2-year to a 5-year over a certain dollar value, which is $50,000 in John Deere credit lingo. Other lenders, it might be different. You can actually take that out to a 6th year. And what that's doing is you're either planning the rotation of your equipment in and out of the fleet, or you're just looking for a payment that you can afford into your budget. And that's basically what you're looking at when you're figuring out how long you want to do that repayment for. The no prepay penalties, I really want to harp on that one because I hear that all the time. This is, when you go back in the beginning and you look at the questions, where is it? We'll get hammered on penalties and interest if we lease. No, you won't. On a municipal lease, you're not going to get any overage penalties, and you're not going to get hammered on interest because if you pay it off early, you're not paying any of the interest that would have accrued over the whole term of it anyways. So you could pay it off 6 months into the lease if you wanted, 2 months, 5 years, whatever the case may be. You're not going to pay any of that remainder interest. So you will not get hammered on interest and penalties at all on a municipal lease. The non-appropriation of funds clause is the big one. When you talk to your town managers, your finance officers, whoever the case may be, because I hear it a lot, we can't budget that for 2, 3, 4 years. You don't have to. And it's written right in there. If you talk to your John Deere salesman, and in talking John Deere, you can do this for wheel loaders, you can do this for excavators, gators, mowers, anything John Deere manufacturing sells, you can do municipal lease on. You can lease your whole fleet, it doesn't matter. So it's written right in there. You can get examples of the non-appropriation of funds clause and show it to whoever is in charge of the books. And that is That's the key right there. No adverse effect on bonding, credit rating, anything like that. And just keep in mind, if you can't afford it, you can't pay for it anymore, John Deere Credit, or me as the dealer, comes, picks up the equipment, hey, thanks a lot. You don't get any of the money back that you already paid, but you're not on the hook for any more. So you just basically paid for what you used. All right, so that is the big thing, and that's usually the biggest obstacle to overcome. The low interest rates, they're generally lower than your conventional leases, and I'm no tax guy or anything, but basically they're lower because the creditor doesn't have to pay the federal tax on it, so they're able to offer a lower rate. That's just so you know why. But now let's get into the real meat of this and try to understand it. If you go to practical example 1, all right, I used real lease rates on this, real factors, and I tried to make it as reasonable and realistic as possible. I've come across deals like this many times. All right, so say your parks department needs $100,000 worth of equipment, and that's at your state contract or your government price. I don't think that's outrageous. That's a tractor, a couple mowers, a gator. Not really that big of a deal. Say all you have in your budget is $35,000, and say you've got that. Say you've got some oil leaking, junked, rusted out pieces of equipment that you can get about 15 grand for. All right. So that's where you're at. What options do you have? All right. So I laid it out real easy. The new equipment costs $100,000. You've got $15,000 you can trade in. So what you're looking at for the purchase, you need $85,000, right? All right, if your budget's only $35,000, you got a shortfall of 50 grand. What can you do? You can get part of what you need, which is usually what happens, part or none, because if you can't get all of it, sometimes they won't let you get it. You can ask for an override, that's not going to happen. Or you can check out the lease, all right? Now keep in mind, I used real actual factors on this, so this is how it would work out. So I just picked a 4-year lease arbitrarily because I figured if it was mowers or something, you might want to start rotating it out at that time. All right, so you'd be looking at leasing $85,000 worth. You had $100,000, you traded in 15 grand worth, so what you're looking at is leasing $85,000 worth. That payment came out to $2,280 a month for $85,000 worth of equipment over 4 years. So annually, you're looking at $27,360 for that lease. If you had $35,000 in your budget and that lease only cost you $27 and change, you actually have a surplus that you can use of almost $8,000. All right, so if you're reasonably confident that, all right, if I can get $35,000 this year, can I get $28,000 the next year and maintain that? Or if you can go to your town manager and say, hey, look, this is what I need. This is what I have. Can we work it out where I can get this lesser amount for several years in a row? And tell them, hey, we get $8,000 almost left over. Apply it to whatever the case may be. That payment isn't going to change. All right? So what you can look at from that is you can get all that equipment. You can get $100,000 worth of iron right now for less than what you have appropriated in your budget for capital. Keep in mind, you are paying state contract price. You're not paying an elevated price. I get that a lot with leasing. You're paying the best price possible, whether it's bid, governmental discount, or state contract. That's what you're leasing at. And you can, in fact, trade in. I know where I work, because of the economy, we're getting creative. I've taken in trucks, shop tools. It doesn't matter. I mean, you guys got to understand, with the economy as bad as it is for you guys, it's tough on the equipment dealers too. To give you a little insight, you basically got us over a barrel right now. Be creative. We're willing to be creative. I'm sure a lot of other equipment dealers are too. Don't be afraid to ask, because you never know what the answer might be. I mean, bandsaws. I took a 2002 Chevy Impala that was used for driver's ed. I'll put a number to anything, and I'm sure most of the other equipment dealers will too. So keep that in mind, clean your yards out, all right? So you can trade in equipment that you don't need anymore against the lease, all right? Now, I want to show you how you can use this to use it as a budgeting tool for your equipment. Practical example too, all right? That 4-year lease is up. You want to replace the leased equipment with brand new equipment. All right, it's 4 years later, steel's gone up, freight's gone up, just like it does all the time. So that same replacement stuff, now 4 years later, costs $115,000, right? I figure that's pretty reasonable markup. All right, so your guys hammered the equipment that you leased already. Now, what was worth $100,000 when you bought it 4 years ago is now only worth $30,000. Because, I mean, they didn't check the oil, whatever the case may be. So if you look at the numbers, the new equipment now to replace costs $115,000. If you trade in the stuff that you just finished leasing for $30,000, you're right back at your $85,000. Your payment's the same. Now, I know because this is, a seminar, I want the numbers to come out right, but I can tell you as a fact, I have customers in Massachusetts that have maintained their same lease payments since 1993. They take care of the equipment and they roll it. I've got a private school that does municipal lease. They roll 3 leases, everything they have, and he takes care of the equipment. So don't get me wrong, it's nice, but he just rolls it every 3 years. I know what's coming in. I can pre-sell it as a salesman. You as town people can tell your salesman, hey, pre-sell it. This is coming in. This is coming off a lease in 2 months. So I can have that equipment sold on my end. I already have that trade value. You know what you can afford, and you just fill in the gaps there. It's a real nice budgeting tool. And I can tell you, there's been times where I've taken an equipment in from this customer, and his new payment is actually like $100 less a month than it was before. So he'll fill in the gap, handheld equipment, maybe a little of this, a little of that, whatever the case may be. And the school he works at, translate that to town, gets used to that monthly payment. They're willing to pay this every month for their equipment. If you take care of your equipment, you can keep rotating that, and you can have that same monthly payment 5-10 years. And that's realistic. As long as the rates don't go ridiculous. I can tell you right now, they're floating around 4 to 5% depending on the dollar value that you're leasing. I've been doing this for, like I said, about 10 years now, and I haven't seen them get up over 7% on a municipal lease. So you can actually stay within dollars for years on your equipment. I don't know how feasible it would be to lease all your wheel loaders, sweepers, whatever the case may be, for the entire town. But I tell you, you look at separate departments. You look at a cemetery department, a water department, parks. Try it out. Try it out on a small one. Just a piece of equipment and see how it goes. I tell you, it's amazing what you can do. So if you look at the conclusions from this, you can use it as a tool to forecast out your budget, what you need for your equipment for years on end. What that enables you to do, if you're rolling your stock at the end of every lease, you're not dumping the money into it in major repairs and major parts. Because if it's still fairly fresh, you haven't gone through that transmission yet, or that clutch yet, or that hydro, or whatever the case may be. So you're not spending that amount of money on a 9-year-old zero-turn mower where the pumps are going every 3 years now. You're not spending that money anymore. You're rolling it when it still has actual value, and you're keeping your payment the same on and on and on. Everybody follow me on that? All right, so that's the big thing is, it's kind of a tough pill to swallow the first time you do it, especially with the town, is to get them to roll the stock over. But I tell you, the first time you do it, it just makes it that much easier. Now, other practical examples, reasons why I've done municipal leases for towns. All right, say you've got something coming up. Say you got a new cemetery, a new park opening up, you need equipment. You know you're not going to get money until the 1st of July, and it is the 1st of March. What are you going to do? Well, if you write a municipal lease, you can get that equipment right now. You've got a no prepayment penalty. Say you set that lease up to do annual payments. You receive the equipment, you've made no payments, 1 July comes, you pay it off. Boom, done. So you can actually get the equipment right now that you need, not have to worry about it until the budget opens up. And if you don't want to lease it really, you just want to do a capital expenditure, you can do that. And it gives you title to that equipment, and it gives you the ability to have it, bring it into the yard, and actually start using it. All right? So I've actually we've done that quite a few times. You know, if it's just a specific piece, you might be able to buy something right out of your operating budget instead of tapping into your capital. If you think you're going to be able to save some on parts, save some on fluids or whatever the case may be, or if you can scrounge $200 a month out of your operating budget, you can actually get a piece of equipment, sizable piece of equipment for a few $100s a month, and not even have to worry about your capital. We've done that. Other benefits is you can manage your cash flow. You're not dumping $50,000 out in one shot. You're taking out in parts and pieces. Like I said, you're reducing your parts and your repair costs. The big one is you can get more bang for the buck. You know, if you're only, like if we look back and you had that $35,000 in your budget and you think you can carry that over for a few years, you still had almost $8,000 in that for a surplus that year. You can get a lot of equipment. You figure that out over 4 years, you're talking another $30,000, $40,000 worth of equipment you could have gotten at that time. Another thing that it enables you to do is increase your flexibility to handle changes in duties due to staff or requirements, because you're paying for parts and pieces instead of the whole thing at one time. So say a new cemetery does open up. The schools no longer take care of their grounds. You've got to do that now. Well, you need new equipment. Maybe the town's had to do, unfortunately, layoffs. You don't have as many people anymore. Well, if you don't need the equipment anymore, trade it in, get rid of it, and apply it somewhere else. So those are a lot of things that you can do with a lease. So to recap, basically, is you ought to know what a lease is by now, and what a municipal lease is. The features and the benefits of municipal lease, remember, non-appropriation of funds clause is the big one, and no prepaid penalties. Those are the two that really stick in the head. And hopefully you understand now how a lease can have applications for your town. At this time, are there any questions? Yes?
What is the lease fee to our rent fees now, leasing equipment now?
Usually you have a fee for writing the lease, and I'm talking in John Deere terms because that's what I know. There are other companies out there that will do a lease. Writing a lease is about $150. You have to have proof of insurance, liability, and physical damage. Every town's got that, so that doesn't cost you anything. And then the interest right now on over $100,000 worth on a lease, it's under 4%, and under $100,000, I think it's like 4.5%. So I mean, it's really low right now. Okay. Anybody else?
The percentage, even if the financial people in town, what is the rate? You said 4 to 5% on a lease that you're paying.
Yep.
What is it if you take out a capital, you pay $100,000?
If you just doing a regular note.
What is that? Do you know what that rate? I mean, I don't know if anyone knows if there's any.
Yeah, it depends on the piece of equipment and how long you're doing it. But I would say you're probably going to be in the same ballpark, maybe a little lower, around a 3.5, and up to about 7.5, depending on the volume that you're talking. So you're going to be right in that ballpark. Yep.
Because I'll just say, I mean, I'm from the town of Foster, and I started looking at it because the capital budget, as you're saying, is going down.
Yeah.
We need equipment to do the jobs. You're repairing crap that
Exactly.
doesn't run, and it's something that guys here have to go back to their directors and say, this is a viable option to get the equipment we need, because my town's, I don't think like any others, that the capital budget's going down.
Oh, exactly.
You know, 2 years ago it was 700,000. Last year it was 300,000.
Yep.
So everything's relative in numbers, but in order to get the equipment you need to do the jobs, this is the option that I've looked at just from the last, the capital budgets now.
Yeah.
In order to get the equipment I need, they're not going to buy it new, purchasing it new.
No.
And so it is the way to go. So it's just, I would just say, for the people here to take it back to their bosses to say, you need to look at this, because we need equipment that we're fixing, stuff that is just about running, and it's the way to get new equipment so you can do your job because you have less people.
Right. No, and I'm being serious when I tell you this. Like I said, I am an equipment salesman. It's how I make my living. Other guys out there, clean your yards out. I mean, be tough with us. I mean, put the screws a little bit, you know, I mean, as bad as you're hurting, we still need to sell equipment. It's your opportunity to try to be creative, and I tell you, something like this municipal lease can really, it can get you the equipment that you need. If you guys go back to your towns and it's something that you want to pursue with the director or the town manager, myself, the other salesman that I work with, my boss, we've gone to towns and done the same presentation for the town managers, for the selectmen. We can do that. The board of trustees on a cemetery, we actually have it on PowerPoint, so we can do that. So don't be afraid to ask us. We're more than willing to travel. That's what we do. We can do that. If you want me to do it for CAD equipment, I'm sorry, I will not do that. John Deere only. But yeah, more than willing and able to do that. Any other questions?